just never knew how to tell you.
I would be able to talk about my life.
I ever loved a vodka.
I have two moms. You want me to say it out loud?
When you're amongst a room full of Indians, the first question they ask you is, where in India are you from? While standing in line, waiting to get my visa for India, in a room full of Indian people, chatting and discussing their travel plans with each other, no one asked me where in India I am from. No one spoke to me. No one except a white boy who had a gap between his front two teeth. He was the only one. And like me, he too had been silent the entire time. And like me, he too was gay. This year I turned 24 years old. I'm returning to India for the first time in 10 years. Every thought of going back fills me with dread. I'm afraid to find that the place that I've called home my entire life might no longer exist. 10 years suddenly seem like a lifetime. A lifetime of change, a lifetime of longing, and a lifetime of exile. Growing up, my mother never spoke of the time we lived in Delhi. The time when the riots happened. I have no memory of it. And she was trying to forget that time. Or maybe she had already forgotten. There are some moments you remember, and some you forget. And then there are those you reimagine over and over again, hoping to make sense of who you are and how you see yourself in relationship to the world around you. I imagine that I'm 2 years old. The roads are covered with dead bodies, and the air is filled with the smell of burning flesh. We're looking for a place to hide, and a stranger gives us refuge. If it wasn't for him, I would have been killed. He saved my life, and he was a Hindu. Milind Soman had these deep, sunken, lonely eyes. I would lose myself in them for hours. I desired his eyes, and I desired him. He helped me escape from my own loneliness. I'm 15 years old, and I've just come across a picture of him standing there naked. He's holding her in his arms, not to draw her near, but to maintain a safe distance from her. His eyes do not acknowledge her presence. They're lost into loneliness until I find them. Soon I'll cast her out of the picture, and it'll just be me and him, left there standing, lost in each other's eyes. From then on, I spent every moment embracing him. We were inseparable, until I had to leave him behind to move to America.
I think I discovered dance when I saw this film Salangai Oli, in which a very popular actor was playing a dancer, and what struck me was the way in which he could combine his masculinity and gracefulness without having any problems. Till then, I associated, and probably the largest society in India associated gracefulness with women, and here was a man who was also pushing that a little further. He was also not being restricted by his gender. He was not restricted by being a masculine angular dancer. He was doing something that was graceful. For me personally, I found that liberating. I found that it gave me a place where I could have different things coexisting without having to fight over each other or feel like you have to be bound by these strict thoughts of what a man does and what a woman does. It was more what you wanted to do and how you wanted to express it in dance, and dance became this fluid, very flexible place for me after having been in a very strict and conservative society. Particularly in Indian dance, a man can portray several different characters within the framework of one dance. Within one dance, you could be a god, a goddess, a demon, a woman, a man, a child, and it also takes literature or poetry and then gives you a way to interpret it and abstract it. And it had a lot of opportunities to kind of develop your own personality. You could be a lover, you could be a friend, you could be a parent, you could be whatever you wanted to be in that dance, and that's what I found very liberating and grounding in a way that I couldn't find in other parts of society. I came out when I came to the United States, but the process itself, I'm sure, started much earlier for me, probably growing up in India. Intimacy was a very common thing among Indian men, and you would often see boys holding hands or men with their arms around each other's shoulders in public. It wasn't a part of sexuality, it was intimacy devoid of sexuality. And so when I came to the United States, I was able to see that intimacy among men had a specific resonance for me. As a dancer, you have ways of exploring taboo topics. For the gay men, or for the gay man in me, it became a place where love was affirmed. I think all art forms are inherently sensual. You have to feel sculptures, or you have to hear music. So I feel like dance epitomizes sensuality in that way. You get to see the dancer moving, you hear the rhythms of the feet, they're telling you the stories, and it puts together all these different sensual elements in one place. And so I found this interesting avenue in which, under classical and very traditional structures, dancers had found a way to continue to express sensuality and sexuality. I think almost everyone goes through a metamorphosis in their lives as they develop different aspects of their identities. But for LGBT people, metamorphosis is like the beginning of their sexual life. You realize that you're not the straight person others want you to be. And so I found this huge connection between being a dancer and being a gay man, because both identities in some way are trying to find a way to this core of themselves that is not what society is looking at. It's not what other people want you to be. It's your core, it's your central voice that is not afraid of what's happening around you. It's not afraid of societal pressures. It just is. As a dancer on stage, I can be whoever I want to be. And it gives me a place to bring in my identity in several ways, not just in my identity as a gay man, but my identity as a gay man, as a South Asian, as someone who's liberal, and anything else I chose to explore, I could find a place to do it.
The news of Matthew Shepard being beaten and tied to a fence spread quickly. I'm 17 years old. There are some moments you remember, and some you forget. And then there are those you reimagine over and over again, hoping to make sense of who you are and where you belong in this world. When I arrived at school that day, everyone told me to be careful. They told me not to be so gay. I imagined how it might have felt like if I was beaten and tied to a fence, left there to die. I wonder if getting beaten and tied to a fence was something inescapable, something every gay person experiences. I wonder if anyone would have cared, especially because I'm not an American. And unlike Matthew, I certainly am not white.
One of the biggest challenges of dating a white person is that because you belong to a different culture, you become a representative of that culture and you're expected to know everything about it. Being gay does complicate the situation, especially because expectations become very widely different between two different cultures. The difference is that, for example, when I'm growing up in India, you're always expected to marry off and you're expected to always marry a girl. Now, this expectation is not that strong in America. And so a person who's growing up in America would be more open to say, okay, I'm being out, and maybe would not be able to understand the extreme family pressure that a person would face to marry off to marry a girl, you know. So that could become a slight culture clash that, you know, why does your family behave that way? So you don't choose a person just on the basis of one particular identity. And if you do, I personally feel you're setting yourself up for disappointment. We are always looking for some base set of criteria in the people who we like. So yes, a South Asian would meet the first criteria of cultural identity. But what about the other characteristics? So this introduces a probability whether you would like a South Asian or not. So when I came out, I was initially very insistent on dating South Asians. I wanted a South Asian boyfriend. I didn't think that my family would be able to accept a white guy. And when I started going out and meeting people, I did a small calculation of what is the probability of me ending up with a South Asian boyfriend. And when I start probabilistically taking out people based on criteria which are important to me, say attractiveness and how they speak, what is the educational status, and given the number of South Asians that are in the DC area, I saw that there's, probabilistically speaking, chance of me meeting one person, one South Asian, who I might like enough and he would like me so that we might end up in a companionship. It really is a game of statistics. My mom had a very prude attitude towards sex, and I was always under the impression that no sex with girls until after marriage. But at the same time, there were these desires. So the first year after coming out, I went back home. I wasn't dating anybody, and I told my parents that I am gay. And the whole of next year was my mother's journey in trying to come to terms with it. And within that year, I started dating Theron. So the next time when I was visiting, he would call me almost every night. And my mom knew that I was seeing someone. So I told her that I'm dating Theron, and I showed her the pictures. My dad was a little hurt that I did not show him the pictures. And one day before I was going to come back, he talked to me and he said, Ayush, you showed your mom your boyfriend's pictures, but you did not show them to me. Except that he did not use the word boyfriend, he said friend. In Indian culture, marriage is such a big part of your life. Right when you're born, your parents start thinking about, how they will get you married, who they will get you married, and how they will do the ceremonies. And by the time you are dying, you are planning the marriage of your grandkids. I think my mom is coming around to the idea that my life partner is going to be a guy. Now, how would she react if I suddenly say that, Mom, I'm going to marry Theron? I don't know how she will react, but I think, she is coming more and more to terms with it.
Look what the sun has done to me. It seems there's no more fun. Do me. Why must all the boys act so shy? I have guessed the reason why. I may be as brown as a berry, but that's only secondary, and you can't tell a difference after dark. I may not be so appealing, but I've got that certain feeling, and you can't tell a difference after dark.
In the days following September 11, Balbir Singh Sodhi, a Sikh, was shot and killed in front of a gas station in Arizona. When he was being arrested, the man who shot Sodhi yelled, "I stand for America all the way." After September 11, Sikhs became the prime targets of hate crimes, as one of the largest and most visible ethnic minority. Mistaken for their appearance, misunderstood for their otherness. As part of the efforts to rebuild the country after the attacks, the American Red Cross led a nationwide campaign asking people to support their fellow citizens by donating blood. At the clinic, the man in the white coat asked, "Are you a man who has had sex with another man since 1977? "Yes," I replied. An indefinite deferral. My blood was deemed unsafe, impure for having sex with another man since 1977, unworthy of helping another American.
I'm Pakistani, and I consider myself Pakistani because I was born in Pakistan. Even though I was raised in America, I was bred in America, I was born in Pakistan. That is where my culture is, my heritage is, that is where my parents were born, where my entire family is from, where I still have family. I haven't been back to Pakistan in about 4 or 5 years. The last time I went was in 2001. Do I desire to go back and visit? Yes, absolutely. Because again, I identify myself as a Pakistani. I see it as my country. But the one thing as a gay Pakistani male, I'm going to have to answer a lot of questions. And I know when I go back, the first question is going to be, once they have the knowledge that I'm divorced, the first question they're going to ask me is, well, when are you getting married again? And I don't want to lie. The first time I realized that I was different or that I was gay was as far back as I can remember, at the age of 5. I remember my mother having this collection of Indian and Pakistani dolls that were dressed up in typical outfits. Saris and lengas and ghararas, shararas, peshwas, so on and so forth. And I remember being absolutely in awe of how their clothes were and how colorful and how beautiful they seemed, and taking my mother's dolls when she wasn't looking and playing with them and taking off the saris and then putting on the saris with the pallu and the whole pleats that they would make and kind of doing it my own way or differently, and then my mother asking, "Who's been playing with my dolls?" and me denying it. I remember one day when I was 7 or 8 years old, I took my mother's green dupatta. Don't know why I chose green, but It was a green dupatta, and I wrapped it around my head and left a long trail of it dangling from behind me, and to try to emulate the courtesans or the heroines of Indian movies. And I put on the song Chalte Chalte from Pakiza, the movie Pakiza, and I remember dancing to it in front of my mother's sister, my aunt, and her being totally amused by my desire to want to do this. And I remember it being so natural, and I realized that that was the first time in my life that I expressed myself as a gay man. My favorite types of Indian movies were those where there would be mujras, and a mujra would be a courtesan, or better known in Indian movies as a tawaif, a prostitute, who would be heavily adorned in jewelry and would wear these absolutely beautiful outfits. And when she would dance and twirl round and round, her outfit would swing round and round, and I remember being totally entranced by it. So I could relate to the tawaifs in Indian movies because I saw them as individuals who are trying to seek acceptance. The one thing they don't have is that acceptance, and it's the one flaw that they see within themselves. It's the one flaw that society sees within themselves. And I, as a gay man, said, that's me. I'm a good person, but the one flaw in me is that I'm a gay man, that I, as a man, am attracted to other men. And I equated that to the way these courtesans were, to the way these prostitutes were. Beautiful on the outside, maybe beautiful on the inside, but just didn't have the acceptance that they wanted or they desired by society in general. When I first came out, or when I first contemplated coming out, I hesitated because I felt that if I did, I would betray not only my parents, my family, my friends, but that it would be turning my back on my culture, my religion. I remember the first time I kissed a guy. It was 9.5 years after I got married, and it was 4 months before I was separated. And when I kissed him, I felt something ignite within myself that had been put out a long time ago. The intimacy I desired, those needs were finally being met. And I felt content.
Ladies and gentlemen, we arrive in New Delhi International Airport. It's 11:25.
और प्रकाश चिन्ह के पूछने तक अपनी सुरक्षा पेटी बांधे रखें। ऊपर बने लॉकर को सावधानी से खोलें जिससे सामान बाहर न गिरे। हम आशा करते हैं कि आपकी यात्रा सुखद रही और ये कामना करते हैं कि आप हमें फिर से आपका स्वागत करने का अवसर देंगे। एयर फ्रांस की तरफ से जो स्काई टीम की सदस्य है, हम आपसे विदा लेते हैं।
I'm back in India now. Back after 10 years. Back to where it all started. I looked for Milind Soman, but he's no longer where I last left him. He's gone, along with everything else from my childhood. After 10 years, the Maharashtra government dropped the obscenity charges filed against him. I also found out that he broke up with Madhu Sapre, and just before I returned, he married his French girlfriend Milind. With the exception of my childhood being erased, India remains the same. The same streets, the same houses, and the same people who occupy them. I feel restless here. I now realize that it's not India, but I who has changed. When I'm in a room full of people, the first question I'm asked is, where are you from? I no longer have an answer to that question.
ਕਦਮਾਂ ਵਿੱਚ ਡਰ ਕੇ ਉਛਲਾ ਬੈਰੀ ਓਏ ਪੂਰੇ ਵੇ ਵਤਨ ਮਾਹੀਦਾ ਦੂਰੇ ਵੇ ਜਾਣਾ ਪਹਿਲੇ ਪੂਰੇ ਵੇ ਗੱਲ ਸੁਣ ਛਲਿਆ ਚੋਰਾ ਵੇ ਕਾਦਲ ਆਇਆ ਈ ਚੋਰਾ चला कूते दरिए चला कूते दरिए चला कूते दरिए वे कला मुँह ते करिए वे सच्चे रब तो डरिए वे गल सुन छलिया टोला वे रब तो का दई ओला